AITA for cutting off financial support after my wife gave my seat to her ex? I'm David, 38, Laura's husband of 7 years, and the father of our 6-year-old daughter, Sophie. Sophie leaves glitter stickers on my phone case, puts too much syrup on everything, and insists weekend pancakes taste better when I shape them like stars. For a long time, I thought being the calm person in a marriage meant knowing when to let things go. I told myself I was protecting our home from unnecessary conflict. What I was actually doing was teaching Laura and her family that disrespecting me came with no consequences. It didn't start with anything dramatic. Howard, Laura's father, had a habit of complimenting me in ways that felt like insults. "David's dependable," he would say, usually after telling some story about Julian, Laura's ex-husband. "Not flashy, but dependable." Or he would clap me on the shoulder and say, "You're the practical choice." The first few times, I laughed because everyone else did. Laura would squeeze my hand under the table, and I took that as reassurance. Later, I realized what the squeeze really meant. Please don't react. Brenda, Laura's mother, was softer about it. She never openly criticized me. She just treated my time as family property. She would call because the garage keypad stopped working, because a light fixture needed replacing, or because Howard couldn't figure out why the printer kept disconnecting from the Wi-Fi. I would drive over, fix whatever needed fixing, and leave without making a big deal out of it. Then, the next time we were all together, Brenda would tell someone, "Laura helped us sort that out." Laura would glance at me and say, "Well, David did most of it." Most of it. As though I had been her assistant. Julian was a different kind of problem. He and Laura had been married for less than 3 years in their 20s. They had no children together, no shared property left, and no practical reason to remain close. But Howard and Brenda still invited him to birthdays, holiday dinners, cookouts, and family celebrations. Laura always gave me the same explanation. "He was part of the family for years." "So was your old roommate," I once said. "She doesn't come to Thanksgiving." "That's different." "Why?" "Because it is." Whenever I asked for a clearer boundary, Laura said I was making something harmless feel ugly. Julian was good at staying just inside the line. He never openly flirted with Laura in front of me. He made comments that could be defended as jokes. At one dinner, Laura reached for the wine list, and Julian said, "Don't bother. She'll order the Pinot and then complain it's too dry." Laura laughed. Julian looked at me. "Old habits. I still know what she wants before she does." I said, "That must be why the marriage worked out so well." The table went quiet. Laura kicked my shoe under the table and later told me I had embarrassed her. "He was joking," she said in the car. "So was I." "No, you were being hostile. He was being territorial. You're imagining things because you're insecure." That word became a convenient lid they could put over any objection I raised. Insecure. Sensitive. Jealous. Difficult. Meanwhile, Julian got to smile, bring expensive-looking gifts, tell old stories about Laura, and act like our marriage was a temporary administrative detail. I stayed because most of our life together wasn't bad. At home, we could still laugh. We made dinner together. We watched terrible reality shows after Sophie went to bed. Laura sometimes fell asleep with her feet tucked under my leg because they were always cold. We had arguments about laundry, schedules, and whose turn it was to buy milk. Normal things. I believed we were a team with one weak spot. She could not stand up to her parents. Then Howard's business ran into trouble. He called me late one night, about 8 months before the anniversary dinner. Laura and Sophie were asleep. I was in the kitchen rinsing plates when my phone buzzed on the counter. "David," Howard said when I answered. His voice lacked its usual confidence. "I need to ask you something, and it stays between us." That sentence should have warned me. He explained that the business had lost a major account and was having trouble renewing a line of credit. There was enough work coming in to recover, he said, but the bank wanted additional security. Without it, he could lose the line, miss payroll, and trigger a chain of problems. "What are you asking me to do?" I said. "I need a guarantor." I leaned against the counter and watched the water run down the sink. "How much exposure?" He named the amount. It was large enough that I stopped breathing for a second. "Does Laura know you're calling me?" "She knows we're under pressure. She doesn't know the details." "Does Brenda?" "Not all of them." "Why me?" He hesitated. Then he said, "Because your finances are stable and the bank will accept your signature." There it was. Not trust, not family, utility. I told him I would not agree to anything over the phone. I wanted documents, terms, bank correspondence, and time to review everything. He sent the paperwork the next morning. The loan was real. The risk was real. So was the deadline. I should have said no. I know that now. But Laura had been anxious for weeks. She kept checking her phone when her father called. She worried about her parents losing everything they had spent decades building. She worried about Brenda's blood pressure. She worried about the employees. I convinced myself I was protecting my wife from a disaster that would land in our home anyway. Before I signed, I told Howard plainly, "I'm doing this for Laura and Sophie, not for your pride. I understand. And there will be complete financial transparency. Of course. And no new borrowing without disclosure. Absolutely." Then he added, "I don't want the extended family knowing. There's no reason to create panic." I didn't like that part, but privacy wasn't automatically deception. Businesses had confidential problems all the time. I agreed that the details did not need to become family gossip. Laura knew more than Howard claimed. 2 days after I signed, she texted me while I was out. "Dad said the bank accepted your paperwork. Is everything okay now?" I replied, "For now. He has to stick to the terms." She wrote, "Thank you. Please don't bring it up at Thanksgiving. He's embarrassed." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed, "I wasn't planning to announce it." She responded with a heart, and "We know what you did." At the time, I thought "we know" meant she was grateful. Later, I understood it meant "we know, so please stay invisible." The loan renewal went through. Howard's business stayed open. The family stopped whispering about a possible crisis. A few weeks later, at a Sunday dinner, Brenda raised her glass and said, "We've been very fortunate lately." Howard nodded toward Julian. "Good relationships matter," he said. Julian introduced me to a few people who helped calm things down. Julian gave a modest little shrug. "I just made a couple calls." I looked at Laura. She was cutting Sophie's chicken into smaller pieces. I waited for her to look up. She didn't. In the car, I asked, "What was that?" "What was what?" "Your father just implied Julian saved the business. He said Julian made calls. He also looked directly at him while talking about surviving the crisis. Maybe Julian did help. He didn't sign anything." Laura sighed. "You agreed to keep the financial details private. Private is not the same as false. No one said anything false. They created an impression. David, please. My dad is finally sleeping again. Can you let him have some dignity?" I looked out the passenger window. His dignity seems to require mine. That's not fair. But she never explained why. The months that followed were full of little moments that made the bigger truth harder to ignore. Howard would ask me for updated financial information, then introduce Julian at gatherings as someone who really understands how business works. Brenda would text Laura about an urgent bill. Laura would transfer money from a side account we used for household overflow and tell me afterward. It was only $800. "It's not the amount," I said. "It's the secrecy." They needed help. They already have help. My name is attached to a loan. You make everything sound transactional. It becomes transactional when people only remember me when money is involved. She rolled her eyes. That hurt more than an argument would have. 2 weeks before Howard and Brenda's anniversary dinner, a calendar invitation appeared on Laura's phone while it was charging on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. The screen lit up while I was making Sophie's lunch. Howard and Brenda, 40th anniversary dinner. The guest list preview showed Julian's name. When Laura came downstairs, I asked, "Julian's going?" She froze for half a second before opening the refrigerator. "I think my mom invited him." "You think?" "It's their anniversary." That wasn't my question. She took out the orange juice and poured a glass without looking at me. "Please don't make their night about him. I'm asking whether my wife's ex-husband is attending a private family dinner. He's close to my parents. So am I, apparently, when the bank needs paperwork." Her face tightened. "Do not start that again." "Start what?" "Telling the truth." Sophie came running into the kitchen with one sock on and asked if she could bring crayons to the restaurant. Laura immediately turned toward her. "Of course, baby." The conversation ended the way most of our difficult conversations ended. Not resolved, just interrupted and abandoned. On the night of the dinner, Laura checked the reservation twice before we left. She changed earrings 3 times. She kept smoothing the front of her dress even though there was nothing wrong with it. Sophie wore a little cardigan Brenda had bought her and asked whether Grandpa was going to make a speech. Probably, Laura said. Will it be long? Definitely, I said. Sophie giggled. For a few minutes in the car, we felt normal. The restaurant had a private room in the back with low lighting, white tablecloths, and gold paper numbers beside the floral centerpieces. There was one long main table for immediate family and close guests, plus a smaller side table for several cousins and distant relatives. A hostess smiled as we entered. Happy anniversary, she said to Howard and Brenda. Brenda kissed Laura, hugged Sophie, and gave me a quick touch on the arm. You made it. Not, I'm glad you're here. You made it. Sophie spotted a coloring menu at one place, setting, and ran toward it. I followed, expecting to sit beside her and Laura. Then I saw the cards. Laura was printed on a cream card near the middle of the main table. Sophie was beside her, with a booster seat already in place. Julian was on Laura's other side. My card was not there. I scanned the table again. Howard watched me do it. Aunt Jill, Brenda's sister, stood near the far end holding a glass of water. She noticed too. I found my card at the smaller table near 2 relatives I had met only once. I picked it up and walked back to the main table. Is this a mistake? I asked. Howard did not even pretend to check. No. Laura leaned closer to me. David. I kept my voice low. Why am I sitting over there? Howard adjusted his cuff. The main table is tight. There's a seat for Julian. He's part of the history being celebrated. So am I. I'm your daughter's husband. Howard smiled in the way people smile when they want to make cruelty look civilized. Don't take it personally. Some seats are earned. A server carrying water glasses slowed down, heard the last sentence, and looked away. I held the card between 2 fingers. What exactly does that mean? Howard glanced around the room as if I were the one creating an uncomfortable scene. This anniversary dinner is for real family, David. Not the guy who pays the bills. There were 10 or 12 people close enough to hear him. No one spoke. Then Laura said, quietly, please don't start something tonight. I looked at her. Not at Howard. Not at Julian. At her. I wasn't the one who started it. Julian was already standing beside the chair marked with his name. He lifted both hands. I didn't ask them to seat me here. No, I said. You just sat down and enjoyed it. His smile lasted a second too long. Howard said, there's no need for attitude. I looked at Sophie. She was coloring a cartoon sundae and had not understood most of the exchange, but she had noticed the silence. Why is Dad sitting far away? She asked. Laura reached for her. It's just the seating plan, honey. Sophie frowned. But Dad sits with us. That was the closest anyone came to defending me. I could have forced the issue. I could have dragged a chair over, raised my voice, or announced exactly whose signature had kept Howard's business from collapsing. Instead, I put my seating card back on the side table. I sat through the appetizers because Sophie was hungry. Laura barely spoke to me. Every time our eyes met, she gave me the same warning look. Don't. Howard acted as though nothing had happened. Julian talked about a recent trip and made everyone laugh. Brenda asked Sophie about school. Aunt Jill kept glancing from Howard to me. When the entrees arrived, Howard stood for his toast. He thanked Brenda for 40 years of loyalty. He thanked Laura for being the heart of the family. He mentioned Sophie as their brightest joy. Then he turned toward Julian. And I want to thank someone who proved that family does not always end when paperwork gets signed. Julian lowered his head with a practiced expression of humility. Howard continued. When things became difficult this year, some people kept their distance. Julian made calls, opened doors, and reminded me that relationships matter. People applauded. Brenda dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. Julian raised his glass. Family doesn't really end when papers get signed. His eyes flicked toward me. I looked at Laura. She stared at her plate. That was the moment something in me settled. Not snapped. Settled. The humiliation was deliberate. Howard knew exactly what he was doing. Julian knew the praise was exaggerated. Brenda was willing to support the performance. Laura knew it was false and chose silence. I was not being overlooked. I was being erased. Sophie ate 3 bites of pasta and started rubbing her eyes. I stood and walked to the main table. She's tired, I said. I'm taking her home. Laura looked up sharply. We haven't had dessert. She can have dessert another night. You're leaving? Yes. This is my parents' anniversary. I'm aware. Howard leaned back in his chair. Running away because you didn't get the seat you wanted? I turned toward him. No, I'm leaving because my daughter is tired. Then I looked at Laura. You can come with us. She glanced around the table. Every face was watching her. I'll get a ride with my parents. That answer told me more than anything she had said all night. I helped Sophie into her coat. She hugged Brenda, waved at Aunt Jill, and asked Laura if she was coming. Mommy will be home later, Laura said. In the parking lot, the air was cold enough that Sophie pressed her face into my shoulder. I buckled her into the car. Before I closed the door, she said, Grandpa was mean to you. I kept my voice steady. Grandpa made a bad choice. Are you mad? I'm taking care of it. She seemed satisfied with that and asked whether she could have pancakes in the morning. Star pancakes. Obviously. She fell asleep before we were halfway home. I parked in the driveway and sat in the dark car for several minutes, listening to her breathe. Then my phone rang. Laura. I answered. You embarrassed me, she said. No hello. No concern about Sophie. You stayed, I said. What was I supposed to do? Walk out of my parents' 40th anniversary dinner? Yes. That would have caused a scene. Your father caused the scene. You made it bigger by leaving. No, Laura. I'm finally seeing how big it always was. It was a seating arrangement. It was a message. You are making this about Julian. No. I'm making it about my wife watching her father humiliate me and asking me to cooperate. She was quiet. Then she said, Can we talk when I get home? We've talked before. You're being dramatic. I looked at my wedding ring. For once, I don't think I am. I ended the call. Then I slid the ring off my finger and put it in the center console. I carried Sophie inside, took off her shoes, and tucked her into bed without waking her. Her glitter-covered phone sticker had somehow transferred to my sleeve. I peeled it off and set it on her nightstand. After that, I went to the kitchen and opened my laptop. I did not start transferring money or sending angry messages. I started reading. I pulled up the original loan agreement, every email Howard had sent, the bank notices, and the account statements showing the additional transfers I had made when Howard claimed cash flow was tight. I listened again to an old voicemail. David, I need your signature by Friday or we lose the line. I know this is uncomfortable, but the bank trusts your position. Call me as soon as you get this. I saved the audio to a separate drive. Then I searched Howard's emails for Julian's name. That was when I found a forwarded thread Howard had accidentally included me on months earlier. In it, he was discussing how to present the business recovery to several relatives and potential partners. One line read, Julian is the face we can put in front of people. David is the signature we actually need. I read it 3 times. Below that, another message from Howard said, Keep the guarantor details private. David understands discretion, and Laura can keep him from taking it personally. I sat back in my chair. Laura can keep him from taking it personally. Our marriage had been reduced to a control mechanism. I kept searching. There were texts from Laura. Dad said the bank accepted your paperwork. Please don't bring this up at Thanksgiving. Just let him have his dignity. We know what you did. And one I had forgotten. If Dad thanks Julian in front of everyone, please don't react. It's mostly about appearances. She had sent that after the Sunday dinner where Howard first praised Julian. I had replied, Why would he thank Julian? She never answered. Laura came home after midnight. I was still at the kitchen table. She dropped her purse on a chair and looked at the papers on the screen. What are you doing? Reviewing what I signed. Her expression changed. David, don't do anything stupid. Interesting choice of words. You know what I mean. I don't. Explain it. She took off her coat. My dad has employees. People depend on that business. So did I, apparently. Please don't turn one bad dinner into a financial threat. One bad dinner. I rotated the laptop toward her and pointed to Howard's email. She read the line about Julian being the face and me being the signature. Her mouth tightened. Did you know about this? Not that exact email. That wasn't my question. I knew Dad didn't want people discussing the guarantee. Did you know he was giving Julian credit? I knew he liked having Julian around because Julian knows how to talk to people. Did you know the toast was going to happen? She crossed her arms. I knew Dad might thank him. And you said nothing. I didn't want to humiliate my father. I laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. So you let him humiliate me. That is not what I meant. It is exactly what happened. She moved closer. Please don't do something that hurts everyone because you're angry. I'm not angry enough yet to be careless. What does that mean? It means I'm going to understand every option before I act. Her eyes went to my left hand. Where's your ring? In the car. She stared at me. You took off your wedding ring over a seat? No. I took it off because my wife chose the table where I was being erased. She slept in the guest room. I slept for maybe 2 hours. At 7 the next morning, I made Sophie star-shaped pancakes. She sat at the counter in her pajamas, drawing purple windows on a paper house. Laura came in looking exhausted. Can we talk after breakfast? She asked. Not in front of Sophie. I know. My phone buzzed with a message from Howard. Call me. I did not respond. 10 minutes later, someone hammered on the front door. Not knocked. Hammered. Sophie jumped. Laura looked toward the hallway. That's Dad. I turned off the stove. Stay with her. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Howard stood on the porch in yesterday's dress shirt under an unzipped coat. His face was red. What did you do? He demanded. I haven't done anything yet. The bank called me this morning. They're reviewing the guarantor status and asking for revised financial disclosures. That sounds like a bank doing its job. You contacted them. I contacted my advisor. You had no right. I stared at him. I had no right to ask questions about a loan carrying my name. You gave your word. I gave my word based on transparency. We have been transparent. You publicly thanked another man for help I provided. His expression changed. For the first time, he seemed to understand that I had found more than the seating cards. This is about last night. This is about the entire arrangement. He lowered his voice. You're going to put the business at risk because your feelings got hurt. No, I'm going to stop putting my household at risk for people who treat me like an outsider. You're threatening this family. I didn't threaten anyone. I stopped promising unlimited protection. You can't just pull a guarantee. I know exactly what I can and cannot do. That's why I'm getting advice. He blinked. You were the guarantor? The question slipped out before he could stop it. I almost smiled. You knew I was. I mean, Laura didn't tell me you understood the structure. She understood enough to keep me quiet. Howard stepped closer. This anniversary dinner was for real family. Then real family can carry the debt. He pointed at me. You're being vindictive. You said I didn't belong at the table because I was the guy who paid the bills. That was a joke. No one laughed. You're twisting my words. No, I'm finally treating them as information. I opened the door. He said, David, don't do this. I looked back at him. You wanted me outside the family. I'm making the finances match. Then I went inside. Sophie was still coloring. Laura stood near the sink, pale. What did he say? She asked. That I'm vindictive. Are you withdrawing the guarantee? I'm reviewing my legal exposure. You know what that could do? Yes. Do you know what the current arrangement could do to us? My father would never let us lose money. He already hid information. That's not the same. It is exactly the problem. She followed me into the hallway after I sent Sophie to get dressed. You're using money to control my family. I turned around. No, I'm using boundaries to stop being used. You're punishing them because your ego got bruised. I'm protecting myself because my wife watched them bruise it and asked me to stay quiet. It was just a dinner. Then why was everyone so careful about where I sat? She opened her mouth, then closed it. I called Nora as soon as Sophie left for school. Nora had advised me on financial matters before, and she was one of the least dramatic people I knew. Her office was plain, with gray chairs, a metal filing cabinet, and a coffee machine that sounded like it was struggling to stay alive. I brought copies of the loan agreement, bank communications, account statements, Howard's emails, and Laura's texts. Nora read in silence for nearly 40 minutes. Then she said, "First, you cannot erase an existing obligation just because you are angry. I know. Second, you may have options regarding future extensions, renewals, additional advances, and informal support, depending on the agreement and what disclosures were made. That's what I want. You also need to separate the legal issue from the family issue. I don't want to ruin his business." Good. Because revenge makes people sloppy. I want out of an arrangement built on concealment. That is a different goal. She tapped one page. This clause requires updated financial disclosure before any extension. Did you receive the latest statements? No. Were additional draws made? I believe so. Were you notified? No. She looked at the account records I had printed. These transfers from your personal account, were they part of the formal agreement? No. Howard asked for temporary help. How temporary? He never paid them back. She made a note. You are allowed to stop informal transfers immediately. You can also notify the bank that you do not consent to future extensions or modifications without full review. Whether you can be released from existing exposure depends on the bank and the contract. I'm not asking for a magic button. Good, because there isn't one. She looked at Howard's email again. Document everything. Do not threaten him. Do not publicly distribute private financial records. Do not touch business accounts. Do not make statements you cannot prove. I only want to stop carrying risk in the dark. Then do it cleanly. That afternoon, with Nora's help, I sent formal written notice that I would not consent to any future extension, increase, renewal, or modification without complete financial disclosure and independent review. I also stopped the automatic personal transfers Howard had described as temporary. Then I moved the remaining money from the household side account into an account requiring both Laura's and my approval for withdrawals above a set amount. I did not take Laura's money. I did not block her from buying groceries or paying bills. I removed the quiet side door she had been using to send her parents money without discussion. When she noticed, she came into the room holding her phone. You restricted the account. I changed the authorization rules. That's the same thing. No, the money is still there. We both have access. Larger transfers require both of us. You don't trust me. You sent money to your parents without telling me. They needed help. Then we discuss it before a dollar leaves this household. You're treating me like a child. I'm treating us like two adults who are supposed to make joint financial decisions. She sat on the edge of the bed. My mom called. Dad is panicking. The bank asked for information. That is not destruction. He says they may change the terms. That is possible. Do you care? I cared enough to sign when no one else would. That's not what I asked. I sat across from her. I care about the employees. I care about your parents not losing everything. I also care about not putting Sophie's future behind a business whose owner lies to me. She covered her face with both hands. I don't know how this got so bad. It got bad one small surrender at a time. Howard demanded a family meeting 3 days later. He did not invite me directly. Brenda called Laura and said everyone needed to clear the air. Laura related to me while standing in the kitchen. Dad thinks you owe the family an explanation. I'll give them one. She looked surprised. You'll come? Yes. Please don't bring legal threats. I'm not bringing threats. What are you bringing? Facts. The meeting took place in Howard and Brenda's living room on a Sunday afternoon. Howard sat in his usual chair near the fireplace. Brenda perched on the couch beside Laura. Julian was there, which told me everything I needed to know about the intended purpose of the meeting. Aunt Jill sat near the window. 2 of Laura's cousins were there too, both looking uncomfortable. Sophie was with a trusted babysitter. I would not have brought her into that room. When I entered, Howard did not stand. Brenda gave me a tight smile. Thank you for coming. I placed several printed documents on the coffee table and sat in an empty chair. Howard looked at the papers. This is a family conversation, not a board meeting. You made it a financial conversation when you used my name. Brenda sighed. David, families don't keep score like this. Families don't erase the person carrying the debt. Julian leaned back. Can we all admit this is really about the dinner? I looked at him. The dinner was the moment I stopped ignoring the rest. Howard said, there, He admits it. He is jeopardizing everyone because Julian was invited. No, I said. I'm ending undisclosed support because the financial arrangement was misrepresented. Nothing was misrepresented. I placed the signed guarantor agreement on the table. This is my signature. No one moved. I placed the bank notice beside it. This confirms the line of credit depended on additional security. Then I placed the account statements showing my personal transfers. These are funds I sent when Howard said the business needed emergency cash. Brenda's face changed. She looked at Howard. You told me those payments came from recovered invoices. Howard ignored her. I placed a transcript of the voicemail on the table. I need your signature by Friday or we lose the line, Aunt Jill read aloud. The room went quiet. Howard said, you had no right to share private business information. I have every right to explain why my household is being blamed. Laura whispered, David. I looked at her. You wanted calm. This is calm. Then I put the email in the center. Aunt Jill picked it up before Howard could stop her. She read the line slowly. Julian is the face we can put in front of people. David is the signature we actually need. Her eyebrows lifted. She looked at Howard. Is this real? Howard's jaw tightened. This is not the place. That wasn't my question, Jill said. Is it real? It's more complicated than one email. I said, it got complicated because you needed my signature and wanted Julian's applause. Julian laughed nervously. This is embarrassing, man. No, I said. What's embarrassing is taking credit for a seat I paid for. I never said I signed anything. You accepted the toast. What was I supposed to do? Correct him during his anniversary? Yes. He spread his hands. I made introductions. I helped with relationships. Aunt Jill looked directly at him. Did you put money in? Julian glanced at Howard. Not exactly. Did you guarantee the loan? No. Did you sign anything? No. Then what did you do? I connected Howard with people. Howard cut in. Julian helped stabilize confidence. I said, and I stabilized the actual credit line. One of Laura's cousins leaned forward. Wait. Everyone thought Julian helped save the business. Howard snapped. No one said that. Brenda said quietly. You allowed people to believe it. Howard turned on her. This is not helping. That was the first visible crack between them. Laura had not moved. Her eyes stayed on the texts I had printed. I placed those down last. Dad said the bank accepted your paperwork. Please don't bring this up at Thanksgiving. Just let him have his dignity. If Dad thanks Julian in front of everyone, please don't react. It's mostly about appearances. Aunt Jill read the messages, then looked at Laura. You knew? Laura's face went red. I knew David signed documents. I didn't understand every term. You understood enough to ask him to stay quiet, I said. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I was trying to protect my father. From what? Humiliation. I waited. She looked down. I said, and who protected me? No one answered. Howard stood. This is absurd. David agreed to confidentiality, and now he is turning private support into public leverage. I agreed to privacy, I said. I did not agree to be publicly degraded while another man took credit. You are too sensitive. Aunt Jill shook her head. No, Howard. You sat his wife's ex-husband beside her, moved David to another table, and thanked Julian for help David actually provided. That seating arrangement was Brenda's. Brenda looked at him sharply. You approved it. Howard's face hardened. Everyone is missing the larger issue. The business supports multiple families. I agree, I said. That's why you should provide the bank with accurate records and negotiate revised terms. You know they may reduce the line. Yes. You know what that could mean. Yes. And you're willing to let it happen. I am willing to stop assuming personal risk without transparency. That is selfish. No. Selfish was needing my signature and hiding my name because it damaged your pride. He pointed at the door. If you hated us this much, you should never have signed. I didn't hate you. I trusted my wife. Laura flinched. That landed harder than anything else I said. Brenda began crying. I don't understand why this family has to tear itself apart over one night. I looked at her. It isn't one night. One night just made the arrangement visible. She turned to Laura. Tell him he's going too far. Laura wiped her face. For several seconds, she looked like she might do what she had always done. Then she said, Dad, did you know David was the reason the bank approved the loan? Howard said nothing. Dad, I knew his signature was useful. Did you know Julian hadn't provided the money you thanked him for? That toast was about more than money. Did you move David's seat? Howard looked toward Brenda. Laura's voice rose. Did you? Yes. Why? Because Julian has history with this family. So does my husband. Howard scoffed. Your husband is turning you against us. I said, she asked you a question. Howard glared at me. Laura stood. You let me sit there while you insulted him. You told me you could handle David. The room went completely still. Laura stared at him. What does that mean? Howard looked as though he wished he could pull the words back. I picked up the printed email and held it out. It means exactly what he wrote. You could keep me from taking it personally. Laura's shoulders dropped. That was the moment she finally saw the role she had been playing. Not mediator. Handler. Aunt Jill stood and put the email back on the table. Howard, you owe him an apology. Howard said, I will not apologize for protecting my business. No one asked you to, Jill replied. Apologize for using him and humiliating him. He refused. Not directly. He said the timing was unfortunate. He said the seating plan had been misunderstood. He said everyone was emotional. He said business arrangements were complicated. He said everything except the truth. Julian left first. He muttered that the situation had become toxic and that he wanted no part of it. As he passed me, I said, you wanted the seat. Keep the memory. He did not answer. Laura and I drove home separately. When she arrived, she found me at the dining table with a notebook. She sat across from me. I'm sorry, she said. I did not respond immediately. She tried again. I should have defended you. Yes. I knew more than I admitted. Yes. I thought I could keep Dad calm, keep you calm, and get through the dinner. You weren't keeping me calm. You were asking me to disappear. She nodded and cried without trying to hide it. I thought if everyone stayed calm, it would pass. No, it passed through me. Every time. She wiped her face. I don't know how to fix this. You don't fix 7 years with one apology. I know. Do you? She looked at the empty place on my hand. Are you leaving me? I haven't decided. Her breathing caught. I continued. But I know what happens next if we try to stay married. She nodded slowly. Marriage counseling. Yes. What else? No private money to your parents. No guarantees. No transfers. No emergency cards. Okay. Full transparency. Both ways. Okay. Julian is not invited into our intimate family space while we are rebuilding this marriage. She looked away. He's close to my parents. That is their choice. Our home, our child's events, and our private celebrations are ours. What if he's at a large gathering? I'm not asking you to control every guest list. I'm asking you to stop pretending there is no boundary to enforce. She nodded. And your father apologizes directly, I said. Not I should have handled it differently. Not, I'm sorry you were offended. The truth. I can't make him. No, but you can decide what access he has to us if he refuses. Her eyes widened. You want me to cut off my parents? I want you to stop asking me to stand alone while pretending we're a team. She was quiet. Then she said, so what happens now? Now you decide whether being seen as a perfect daughter matters more than being honest as my wife. The first counseling session was ugly. Laura spent half of it explaining her father. The counselor finally asked, when David describes being excluded, what do you feel? Laura said, I feel like he doesn't understand the pressure I was under. The counselor waited. Then she asked, what do you feel about what happened to him? Laura looked at me. Shame. That was the first honest answer. In later sessions, she admitted that she had used my steadiness as a cushion. She knew I would keep paying bills, keep making breakfast, keep showing up, and keep avoiding public conflict. She had taken my restraint as proof that I could absorb more. I admitted something too. I had stayed silent because I wanted Sophie to grow up in an intact family. I told myself I was protecting her. But children notice the shape of a marriage even when they do not know the details. Sophie had been the only person at the anniversary dinner willing to say the obvious. Dad sits with us. Laura and I separated our discretionary finances while counseling continued. Household bills remained joint. Larger transfers required written agreement. She accepted it without another fight. Trust did not return because she cried or apologized. It began returning through small actions. 2 weeks after the family meeting, Julian texted her. "You don't have to let David isolate you from people who care about you." Laura showed me the message before responding. Then she wrote, "I'm not discussing my marriage with you anymore. Do not contact me privately about David." Julian replied with a thumbs up. He stopped appearing at our home. He did not attend Sophie's next birthday. Howard and Brenda still invited him to some broader family events, but Laura did not sit beside him, trade private jokes, or tell me I was insecure for noticing. Howard's business did not collapse overnight. The bank required updated records. The line of credit was reduced. Howard had to sell equipment he had been planning to replace later, delay an expansion, and negotiate a payment schedule with 2 vendors. Those were serious consequences, but they were not consequences I invented. They were the financial reality he had hidden behind my guarantee. Several relatives stopped repeating his version of events after Aunt Jill showed them enough to understand what had happened. She did not circulate private statements or turn it into gossip. She simply stopped defending him. At a later family lunch, someone referred to Julian as the person who had helped save everything. Aunt Jill said, "That isn't accurate." Howard changed the subject. His control of the story was gone. Brenda called Laura repeatedly at first. She said Howard was under terrible pressure. She said family loyalty meant helping people through mistakes. She said I was keeping score. Laura finally told her, "David helped Dad through a crisis, and Dad humiliated him. You watched it happen. I'm not asking my husband to fund that anymore." Brenda cried. Laura did not reverse herself. 3 months after the dinner, Howard asked to meet me. We sat at the same restaurant, though not in the private room. He looked older, less polished. "I should have handled the anniversary differently," he said. I waited. He frowned. "What? That is not an apology." I said I handled it badly. "You moved my seat, praised Julian for help I provided, and called me an outsider while my name was attached to your debt." His jaw tightened. "You want me to beg?" "I want you to tell the truth." He stared at the table for a long time. Then he said, "I needed your guarantee. I did not want the family to know how bad things were. Julian was useful socially, and I let people believe he had done more than he did." And the seat. "I was angry that you kept asking questions about the business. So you punished me publicly." "Yes." "And Laura?" "I assumed she would smooth it over. She is your daughter, not your shield." He nodded once. "I was wrong." It was not warm. It did not erase anything, but it was direct. "I accept the apology," I said. "The financial boundary remains." His mouth tightened again. I figured. "There will be no new guarantee." "I understand. No private transfers." "I understand. And if you disrespect me in front of Sophie again, we leave." He looked as though he wanted to argue. Then he said, "Understood." That was the beginning of a limited relationship, not a reconciliation fantasy. Howard did not become kind. Brenda did not stop using guilt. Julian did not transform into a respectful family friend. What changed was access. They no longer got my money automatically. They no longer got my silence. They no longer got to insult me and rely on Laura to explain it away. Laura and I are still in counseling. My wedding ring is no longer in the car, but I did not put it back on immediately. I waited until her behavior matched her apology over time. Our marriage is not the same as it was before the anniversary dinner. That is not entirely a loss. The old version depended on me pretending not to notice what everyone else had learned to expect. Now Laura tells her parents no without asking me to be the villain. She discusses money before moving it. She ends conversations when Howard starts comparing me to Julian. When something is uncomfortable, she does not automatically ask me to absorb it. I am not pretending I handled everything perfectly. I should have challenged the pattern years earlier. I should never have signed a major guarantee without stronger protections. I let resentment build because quiet felt easier than conflict. But withdrawing from future financial exposure was not revenge. It was the end of an arrangement that required my risk, my money, and my silence while another man received the seat and the applause. I did not tear their family apart. I stopped financing the version of it that required me to disappear. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.